All right, this is a quick review just in case you lost your notes or in case you weren't paying attention in class. This is the timeline that we went over, and you've known since you were young that Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492, and that is when he landed. That is the year he landed in the New World, somewhere in the Caribbean. The island is still disputed among historians today. Now, we've been spending a little bit of time on Cortez and how he took over the Aztecs, as well as Pizarro and how he conquered the Incas. And we're going to continue to focus on Pizarro a little bit because he actually takes his ideas from Cortez, who was going to be successful in conquering the Aztecs. The date 1565 for St. Augustine, Florida is just an informational date, nothing that you necessarily need to commit to memory, but just to let you know that the Spanish did set up a colony already, or a settlement already, in what we consider the present-day United States. And we will focus on the Lost Colony just because that's a fun story, but most of our time will be spent on Jamestown, and then we'll be moving on to the next test. Here is Columbus. He is, this is all supposed to be a recap, so just in case you need a little refresher. Columbus is a merchant. He comes from a family of merchants, and since he is from Italy, he is going to be spending a lot of time on the sea. He is, as some would say, the best navigator of his time, that he could tell when hurricanes were coming in. He could read the seas better than anybody. But he came up with this brilliant idea that instead of going all the way around the tip of Africa, he would just sail west and reach Asia that much quicker. And this was all because in 1453, the Ottoman Turks had taken over the overland route from the trade route from Asia to Europe. And so everybody was scrambling to make their claim by sea in Asia because that's where all the wealth and spices and everything that you would possibly want could be found. So Columbus comes up with this idea. All right, I'm going to sail west. I'm going to reach Asia. It's going to take me a couple of weeks. Everything's going to be great. And he has a really hard time getting anybody to fund his voyage. He goes to multiple European countries. He goes to England, Portugal, Spain, France. Like, he's going to everybody asking for funding because honestly he can't do it himself. It's a lot of money to come up with ships and pay your crew and everything that it would involve. So he needs somebody to actually back his journey. Eventually he will get the King and Queen of Spain. This is Queen Isabella, also the same Queen Isabella from the Spanish Inquisition, and King Ferdinand, her husband. They will ultimately decide to fund his voyage. It does take him a few years to wear them down though, but apparently Queen Isabella thought he was either quite handsome, witty, or both. So she decides to go ahead and fund a voyage. Columbus, in a very gutsy move, decides to go ahead and ask for quite a bit. He says, I want 10% of everything brought back, whether I bring it back or somebody else brings it back. He wanted the fancy titles of Viceroy and Admiral of the Sea, and he wanted to govern all the new territories that were found. Surprisingly, the King and Queen of Spain agreed to this, and it was more likely they didn't really think he was going to be successful. It was kind of a gamble. So they figured, sure, you can have 10% because if you bring back anything, we'll be incredibly thrilled. So here he is saying goodbye, right? Here are the lovely three ships. These are just really quick. The Nina Pinta Santa Maria. The one thing you may remember from the video is that these are about 80 feet long, so not huge ships. And you'd have around 30 guys on each ship just sailing away for a couple months, hanging out together. It would be somewhat crowded, and they're going to be very heavy and slower ships as well. They leave in August of 1492. They're expecting it to only be gone about a month. They thought it'd take them about a month to reach Asia. They would be wrong. This is a little story about Columbus, and just to give you a little glimpse into his personality. He was not very successful in his estimation on how long it would take to reach Asia, and so therefore he decides to obviously lie a little bit. And one of the things that he does is the crew is threatening to overthrow him. He has said it would be about a month. It's taken 6 weeks, 7 weeks. The crew wants to throw him overboard. They want to have a mutiny, but he is the main guy to be able to get them back home. So they can't throw him overboard. And so he keeps telling them, we're going to see land the next day, the next day, the next day. And he eventually also decides to give a reward. And this is backed by Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand. I will give a reward for whoever sees land first. On October 13th or 12th, depending on what book you're reading. His lookout, Rodrigo, actually spotted land. And Columbus decides to say, no, no, I saw it first, but I just wanted to make sure, and keeps the reward for himself, which is a bit odd for somebody whose life is being threatened by his crew. However, it just kind of gives you a glimpse that he was maybe a little bit motivated by money. Columbus's discovery, supposedly he lands in San Salvador. That's not 100% guaranteed, so don't necessarily stress out about that. The one thing that he does think is that he has landed in the West Indies, thus giving anybody he meets, any of the natives there, the name Indians. All right, we know that it's not necessarily politically correct today, and we would more likely go with Native Americans. Columbus is going to be responsible for doing a lot of positive things, but also quite a few negative things, especially towards the natives that he finds. He will make 3 different voyages, one of which he will be brought back in chains for having hanged a few Spanish men who had been causing trouble within the new colonies that he helped establish. Eventually, he will be exonerated from this, but he still never forgets that because he views himself as a giant hero, and he thought being brought back in chains and put on trial was beneath him. Some say he died without knowing he reached the Indies. Other people said he knew. Regardless, we know that he kind of died with very few dollars in his pockets, if you will, and he died kind of alone. Not a lot of people mourned him because they had moved on to this giant discovery of Columbus. These are a few things he's credited with. One is kind of this idea of genocide because he does come in and his crew members and supposedly by his orders start to cause problems for the Native Americans. The other thing is you have down here the transatlantic slave trade. He's the first to have brought Indians or Native Americans to Europe, and then as well as Africans from Europe, Africa to the New World. So transatlantic just means he's crossing the Atlantic Ocean, bringing people against their will. So not very positive things to be known for. He's also responsible for starting the Columbian Exchange, and all this is transfer of goods from the New World to the Old World. You have a lot of Old World goods such as horses, oxen, cattle, goats, sheep, smallpox. All of these types of things are brought from the New World, from the Old World. Those are the things that are brought from the Old World to the New World. And the other hand, the New World introduces Europe to tomatoes and potatoes, and chili peppers, and squash and beans, and tobacco eventually. And chocolate. So these are some really wonderful things that we've received from the New World, at least in my opinion. And there are so many more things that we could talk about. There's a giant, giant list, but it's just the first interaction with these different cultures. And that is it.